All right, so we are continuing with assignment 4. We started through proving ground number 2, making sketches for graphic symbols that use the 3 approaches to kind of interrogate our idea and push it in different ways. One was central symmetrical. This is something you need to remember. One was dynamic, and one was a play of positive and negative space. And so at the end of last class, we were deciding on which approach we wanted to refine to use for our finished vector symbol. And let's head to there. So in the class, let me try to remember how many videos. So this will be our 7th video. We are going to work to finish assignment 4, both the black shape vectors and a color variation of it, to be due next class. And then we're also going to be printing one of our vector projects along with 2 of our other projects from so far in the class for our midterm critique, which will also happen next week. So remember, just always follow the course outline to see what we're doing. And so I'm going to jump to assignment 4 just by going right to assignments and going down to assignment 4 and where we post our final logos or vector symbols. The suggested theme is a personal Earth Day achievement badge, right? And it's absolutely great for your personality to show through on these, right? So this was my refined sketch. I posted that. The next step is to turn that into a clean black shape vector. So though we see the black shapes on white here, it looks like it's black and white, but the graphic has to be only in black. So if it was on a red background, it would be black and red. If it was on a green background, it would be black and green, right? It's a single color ink. Once we are happy with that, that takes some time. That's what we're going to be working on the most today, that vector. It is very easy to add color variations to it. So we are really just focusing on being happy with the black vector shapes. And it's similar to that exercise 2 where we made emojis out of vector shapes in Photoshop. But we have a few more options using Illustrator. So what I'm going to do is open up my assignment 4. I mark it yellow because it's still in progress. And I'm just going to review how I set it up in Illustrator. So once you have your refined sketch, this is mine. Notice this is raster based. This is pixels. And if you remember from last class, I drew a lot of this just with the brush tool, right over my rough sketch. I then used the digital to kind of move things around. And then I even composited this bottle from a source I found on Pixabay, and then I changed it a little bit. So however you can get to your understanding of the black shapes, that's what matters. And when you have your refined sketch, I want you to squint at it. Like squint really hard at it and see what gets lost when you squint, because that's the same things that are going to limit its versatility. So the only thing that gets lost are those little lines on the bottle. So I think my design works without those lines on the bottle. I think the shape is good enough, but when it's bigger, that even makes it more clear, right? So I think this works. It's versatile, it's clear. I hope it's engaging and kind of an interesting way of thinking about the Earth Day and our responsibility to it, and kind of humans' responsibility to put recyclable things somewhere, right? It's kind of a call to action. It's also a fun kind of earth-inspired shape, kind of that flower shape. So how do we set it up in Illustrator? Because that's going to give us something really clean. We right-click on it on the same file we posted to Canvas. Whether it was a JPEG or a PNG, it has to be an online format. And we open that file with Adobe Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator looks a lot like Photoshop, but it's pretty different. And so you'll see layers on the right side. Try not to mess too much with the layout of things in Illustrator, because it can be tough finding things when they get lost, but I can help you. So the layers here are not actually layers. They're more like groups. Because every time you make a new vector, it will automatically show the path here. But right now we don't have any vectors. Instead, in this group, we just have the image. Because this is not a vector, this is pixel-based. So what we want to do is onion skin this so that we can make vector shapes on top of it. Just like when we did a screen grab from the emoji program of our plan for our emoji, and then we built it with clean vector shapes in Photoshop. So how do I onion skin it? I double click on it, not on the name. I double click on it in the blue space next to the name. And that will open up its layer options. And then I can name it Refined Sketch or just Sketch, because this is going to get turned off at the end. And then I'm going to dim the image, and I'm going to dim it to 30%. Right? Then it's so important to organize and lock your layers so you don't accidentally mess them up in Illustrator, that next to the eyeball, which you're used to from Photoshop, there is another little dedicated spot, and that's for locking it and unlocking it. So I want you to lock it then. Now I want you to go down to the bottom of the layer window, and you'll see a square with a plus sign in it, just like in Photoshop. That's how we make new layers. This is how you're going to make a new layer. Then you're going to double click next to that name, and you're going to call this Black Shapes, right? And we're not going to dim it, but I want you to see that it has a color. That color is not the color of the vectors. That is just the color that the program will show us to show us the anchor points. And I like red, because red is very easy to see, right? So we're going to mostly be looking at white background, black shapes, red anchor points. So I say, okay. Now, what I demonstrated last class was just like we did with exercise 2, you can go right to the shape tools, and all the tools here are for vectors. And I could start with a circle or an ellipse, and right away I can start playing with its size and shape, right? But you'll notice that a vector has two components, and they're shown right here. So it's made of anchor points. You can see the square anchor points. You see them in red. There's an anchor point, there's an anchor point, there's an anchor point, there's an anchor point. Those individual anchor points with the small selection tool can be selected. And then these are what are called curved anchors, where they have a curve handle coming out of each side of them. And I can adjust each of those with the small selection tool, the little white arrow. When I want to manipulate the whole thing, kind of like we do free transform in Photoshop, I have to click on the large selection tool, which is the black arrow. And that will give me the transform box, and that will let me, arrange it, scale it. And if I right click within that, I don't get warp, but I get options like how to reflect it, how to shear it. These are things you can play with to mess with it, right? Now, the properties of every vector path you use are going to be a fill and a stroke. Right now, the fill is white, the stroke is black. That's often the default in Illustrator. What I want to do is swap those with this little arrow. And now you see that the inside is filled with black, like a black shape, and the outline is white. We are going to turn off all outlines for this. And that's because outlines do not scale in a way that we can control, right? So how do I do that? You see the outline is on the foreground here. I click on this red bar, and that's like a no smoking bar. It's to say no. But I have to click on the vector shape and then click on the bar. You want to do that early. Otherwise, every vector shape you make from here on out will have that stroke, and then you'll have to go through and turn it off for all of them, which is a pain. So you want to start your first shape, making it just a black fill with no stroke. And if the color changes to something else, like red, you can just double click on it and it will open up this color picker. We're just going to use the far left bottom corner. That's solid black. That's what we want. Right. Once we have one shape, you'll see it in your red layer in the drop-down as its own path. So we can select it by clicking on it. We can also select it by clicking on this dot here. Right. Okay, now, just like we did with multiple vector shapes in Photoshop for our emoji, I can copy it and paste it, but I can't use Command J. There is no Command J for duplicate in Illustrator. Instead, you do Command C, and then you do Command V, right? So Command C to copy it, Command V to paste it. And it will paste it kind of offset in the middle. If you want to paste it directly on top, now you see I have two. You would do Copy, Command C, which you can also find under Edit. So Copy, and it shows you the shortcuts. And then you would do Edit, not just Paste, which is Command V, but Paste in Place, which is Shift Command V. But if I do Paste in Place, now you can see I have three of those shapes, but one of them is directly on top of the last one. All make sense? So I'm going to do that again, C, V, and maybe I'll rotate it now. I'm using the large selection tool to kind of move them around. And I want it to look a little bit more hand done. So even though I'm using repetition and maybe I'm stretching to get this shape, I'm not using a perfect circle. And you don't have to hit return. You just click off of it for those movements. But then I can select it again, Command C, Command V. And I'm going to rotate this. And it's not like I need to match my sketch exactly, but I want the same kind of energy to it. Command C, Command V. Why I like starting with the vector shape tools is they'll use very few anchor points. So a circle only has 4 anchor points, right? If you try to draw a circle, and I'll be showing you how you can make vector shapes other ways, it's going to create a lot more anchor points than just 4. In fact, I can show you that right now. If I were to use the freeform pen tool, or if I were to use the pencil tool, which is my favorite tool in Illustrator, and I draw a circle with it, I have to make sure I close it at the end. You see that little circle that appears? And that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 anchor points instead of the 4 I get from this. Now, why can't I see these? These exist, but these are what are called empty paths. You see how their fill is empty and their stroke is empty, but they're still there. So if I wanted it not to be an empty path, what would I need to do? I would need to add a fill. And we're going to ignore the strokes. I'm going to always leave those off. So then I can find my other empty path. So why do I mention that? Well, the best way for me to build this is to make a solid black shape first. Think of cutting it out of paper. So I'm going to put this right in the middle. Actually, no, I'll use it over here. So this is the one I've drawn. But it has a lot of anchor points. Now, the pencil tool, if you double click it, you can actually set it to be more smooth or more accurate. This is my favorite setting right here. Right between smooth and accurate, or smooth and the middle. But if I go to really smooth and I do a circle, even though I'm just as shaky, it might make fewer anchor points, but it looks like almost the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. But if I was a little bit smoother in my circle, nope, I might get fewer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It smooths it out. Let me show you what the smooth really does. If I draw like this, really shaky, it will make it as few anchor points as possible. But if I want something like this that has nice sharp corners and then curves, the smooth will actually round out my corners a little bit. So sometimes you want the pencil to be more accurate. And that way it will plot more anchor points, but it will capture more of your movements. Right, like that.